Welcome back to the Clemson Pawcast. Neither Clemson, Wake Forest, nor Aaron Judge got to 61 on Saturday. Dozens of people watched a 26-point Miami favorite lose by 14 at home. Clemson is 4-0, and life is good. Welcome back, everyone. This is our Clemson-Wake game recap, and we are here to recap the game in which a plucky Wake Forest underdog came in, took advantage of some Clemson defensive lapses, punched above their weight, and ultimately beat the Clemson Tigers 6-1 at Riggs Field. Actually, Cody, let's not do that. We're not here to talk soccer. We are here to talk football, and your Fighting Clemson Tigers beat Wake Forest 51-45 up in Winston-Salem. What a wild game. Here to break this down for our instant reaction pod is my co-host, Cody. Cody, what a game.
Yeah, it was a game. It was kind of a throwback game. It reminded me of games when I was in college. But I guess the difference being we pulled it out. It was a game where we should have pulled away. And in the Dabo Venables era, that was a game where the defense would suffocate after a 14-point lead. But you saw the comeback. You saw a game where we go behind. And then ultimately we come back to win, which again, I've spent many years as a Clemson fan where we've lost those same exact games. So I get out all the positives of, off the top and say that I'm glad we won. And that was a game where you had to have some like true winners, guys like DJ, guys along the defensive line, the interior to make that happen. So that now that we got all the positives out of the way, let's go ahead and do the negatives.
Yeah, well, before we kind of dive into this game, again, it is an instant reaction pod. So we're here to highlight things like what we just saw, first takes, first reactions from this one. Maybe hit on a couple of highlights, lowlights. I think there's both of those to get into, that you're alluding to here, Cody. We'll hit on our favorite moment. I do want to call out, this is also, Cody, our first video show, first YouTube show that we're going to be putting up on YouTube at our channel, Clemson Pawcast, youtube.com/Clemson Pawcast. We encourage everyone to head over there. Some people prefer to kind of take in shows like this through video. So we're making that happen. We're also obviously cutting this up into audio, publishing this on the podcast for those who prefer to listen. So quick plug for that. But yeah, let's move into this, Cody. I mean, just in terms of what we just saw, there's really a few things. This game, obviously, with the score of 51-45, plenty to unpack there. I think I want to start with some positives. Clemson found the gear to win in a shootout, and really, obviously, with a score like that, it was the offense that really carried this team. And in particular, I think it was the passing game that stepped up. I think a lot of the credit, rightly so, thus far has gone to DJU and what he was able to do in this game, but he's not able to complete that number of passes, for that many touchdowns without pass protection and without wide receivers and tight ends stepping up. So I thought in this one, I think the passing game is definitely something that we saw emerge against tougher competition. I think when you're playing like Furman, Georgia Tech, Louisiana Tech, easy to question, are those teams, are those defenses something that we should be that encouraged by? But I think Wake Forest, they're also not world beaters on defense, but they represent a step up in quality. And this team definitely made it happen.
Agreed. And they're well coached too. So I give them a lot of credit for their positioning. I was watching in my rewatch, I watched linebackers that were very sound in terms of their gap discipline, which really, they did a good job of kind of holding us in the run game. You weren't seeing a lot of big runs. I would say you mentioned the pass game. So a positive from that is DJ. Yeah, he did make winning plays. It looked a lot like Trevor Lawrence at times and Deshaun Watson at times. And I don't know, there was a lot of naysayers about using the middle of the field. Check that box. I think the tight ends were utilized a lot early and often, and
in the red zone too, right?
Yeah, and what's clear at this point? It's like our top receivers outside of Antonio Williams. You have Bo Collins, you have Davis Allen, Jake Bernenstold. That's probably our top guys. Maybe Randall gets in the mix. Maybe someone else emerges. Maybe it's Spector. But I just don't see a situation where there's going to be a lot of separation by the wide receivers. It's going to be guys that are going to win with their body, and fair enough if that's what that's what you saw against Wake Forest is just perfectly placed balls by DJ and then guys going up and getting it.
Yeah, I think to complement that, Cody ended up becoming, and we'll talk about this down the stretch throughout the second half, ended up being a little bit of a predictable scheme, predictable play calling. but you still saw Will Shipley and DJ in the running game, do just enough, hustle out those extra yards to move the chains and ultimately score points for Clemson. So that I think the running game is also an underrated key to this victory. Clemson was not going to dominate in this game on the ground necessarily, due to I think some remaining offensive line woes. But those guys, I just want to give credit for their hustle in the running game. In particular, DJ. I know Shipley had some hustle plays. Obviously, that goal line stretch was clutch, but DJ definitely picked up a lot of key yards in this game.
Yeah, he's done a pretty good job, and you see him improving week by week in terms of how he's reading the defense, when to hand, especially like zone reads. The run game did okay, like you said. Shipley broke for a long run early, but ultimately that's still a part of the offense that could improve, in my opinion.
100%.
I think it, like you said, it was predictable. I think that's why defenses are able to stop us, because we are a little bit predictable going through the run early. And my thought was, okay, you give up the run early, or you take these 1-2 yard runs by really good running backs, by the way, off Shipley and Pace, and you open up the RPO game or play action game later on. I didn't see that. So like, maybe I don't know what the thought process was there. I've actually been a fan of how Streeter has managed games. I think intentional conservatism has been kind of the theme. So I thought he had something planned for later. Maybe he's holding it until next week, but yeah, I think a commitment to the run game.
They were playing with the deficit, Cody.
Yeah,
they were playing catch up on the scoreboard, so maybe that played in a little bit to the thought process down the stretch. I'm not sure.
Sure.
Well, in terms of what else we saw, I mean, I think we've been kind of skirting around this. I thought Wake Forest played an excellent game strategically in this one with game planning. They identified a Clemson weakness on the defensive end with the secondary in the Furman and Louisiana Tech film. And early on, they were testing the run and the mesh, that they always do, just to see, like, let's see if our tried and true, our bread and butter can work. After seeing that it didn't work, they just moved to opt to exploit the secondary, and really that happened throughout the game. We saw them erase Clemson's deficit when Clemson was kicking field goals and not scoring touchdowns. That played even more into Wake Forest's hands. And really they stuck to that, going after our corners, really until the final offensive series. And, we don't want to single out individual players here, but it really took Wes Goodwin, I thought, a long time to adjust to what we were seeing on the field, what he was getting out of his cornerbacks in particular. And that was kind of one of my takeaways from the game, is like not only how prone they were to, a feisty quarterback like Sam Hartman and those bigger skilled receivers, but really how long we allowed that to continue in the game.
Right. You mentioned that Wake Forest made the adjustment early, because you're right. They were going with pace. They had a game plan. They quickly redirected and saw, oh yeah, I see the weak link here. This is our game plan. And they wrote it. They executed perfectly. Sam Hartman, let's give him all the credit in the world. He was fantastic. Those receivers were good for Wake Forest. So I gave them credit. Put that into its proper context. But I guess to your point, like, where were our adjustments? Where was Wes Goodwin? And I thought, and I'll need to go back and rewatch, and some other people will do so, and I may be wrong on this. I thought we needed to send more pressure. I thought, like, if you give him enough time, he's showed that he's good enough to sit in the pocket. Doesn't matter if there's 4 rushing or not. Which, by the way, the 4 weren't really getting home. I saw some penetration from the interior, but the defensive ends weren't getting home. So I felt like if you just rush 4, he's going to sit back and pick us apart. Even if there is double coverage on the back end, they're going to connect. So I felt like you had to send pressure. You had to send kind of creative pressure, unique, disguised, delayed, whatever. But I didn't see enough of that. I felt like that was the adjustment that was needed. And the same, you didn't see much adjustment really the whole way to make Sam Hartman feel a little bit uneasy.
I mean, I do think toward sort of the end of the fourth quarter, you saw Wes Goodwin move to more of a cover 2 look, where you had 2 safeties high to back up our corners, who at that point were getting pretty exposed. Call that an adjustment. For whatever reason, I still believe that Hartman and those receivers probably could have, I mean, our guys were probably still going to get DPI flags, against that, even if they knew they had safety help. So I don't know why Clausen and that offense moved away from testing the secondary, and they were really just running that delayed mesh run game on their last offensive series. And then a little bit, it felt like during overtime as well. So that's a little strange. I didn't see any Dave Clausen post game comments to that end. There was a stat floating around, Cody, and this is like really small sample size, but in terms of Hartman's effectiveness when Clemson was blitzing versus not blitzing, he had a much higher completion percentage and they had touchdowns to show actually when Clemson sent pressure versus when they were not. It's to your point, there's many ways to send pressure. I think Clemson was likely at that point sending safeties in where they probably needed to be backing up the corners. So maybe they're fire zone blitzes, that kind of thing that they ought to have been doing instead. But that kind of thing will not hold up against NC State next week. So the good news is, I guess, from a defensive standpoint, we will be getting a few guys back. I think in terms also of just getting that pressure with the starting defensive line, I think getting Xavier Thomas back, yes, he's going to be a little bit rusty, but if he can provide just that extra spark that maybe a Justin Maskell wasn't able to in this one, or possibly even KJ Henry, like that could be the edge here against NC State that we didn't see here against Wake Forest. So a lot to clean up in the secondary, a lot of, film to work with. Crazy that we're yearning for the days of Sheridan Jones coming in here. Because I thought for this season, if we were going to see him, get starting snaps, that was going to prove to be, a negative thing for this defense. But I don't know that Wiggins or Fred Davis or the two freshmen were up to the task necessarily in this game. So a lot of wood to chop, before this next Saturday.
The secondary was a bit disappointing, to say the least. Hot take.
Yeah, hot take. I mean, Cody, they were, let's call it what it is. Like, they were burnt pretty much all afternoon, and let's not dwell on this too much. It's a quick hit, instant reaction pod, but like, I mean, why do you think we're in this situation where we need to be running out there a couple of true freshmen, early and often?
Look, you could talk about like roster management, a lack of takes in the secondary. I don't necessarily agree with that, just because I think we're in a position in the transfer portal era where even if you do have a couple studs that are sitting behind Sheridan Jones, Malcolm, which theoretically you did have a couple studs in Fred Davis and Nate Wiggins, but even if you have some really good talent and they're not playing, someone's going to transfer. So this is just kind of the way it's going to look to me going forward. If you're a high level team, when you get pressed with injuries or you have some issues, you got to go to a freshman, and hopefully that freshman's a 4 or 5-star freshman, which is what happened with Clemson. The bigger concern for me is just it's pretty self-evident. It's the way that they looked in coverage. It looked like Pride and Lucas and even Fred Davis, it looked like they came straight from their high school, threw on a Clemson jersey and said, go out there. Like clearly the speed's there, the hips are there. I see talent when I see all those players, from Nate Wiggins, Fred Davis, Pride, Lucas. I see speed, I see talent, I see no coverage ability. I see no instincts. I don't see them contesting balls or having the awareness to turn around and find balls. That's all coaching. It comes down to, I mean, this is not, again, it's not revelatory.
Well,
it's coaching.
Yeah, let's what's changed, I guess, over the last couple of years. We talked about it in the preseason preview stuff. Mike Reed is now also coaching special teams. He took that over from Mickey Kahn. Mickey Kahn has a bigger role in the defense now. I don't know if we can tangibly see Mickey Kahn's new role play out necessarily, but yeah, I mean, if Mike Reed, he's spending some amount of his time and headspace and bandwidth on the special teams unit, and the punting game wasn't exactly marvelous in this one. But yeah, that's time not spent developing corners. So I think we're starting to feel that a little bit. But again, teachable moments, coachable moments. Hope for the best moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine there's like the time issue between, like, if you can't allocate your pie chart and say like, oh, X amount goes to cornerbacks and coaching, like, and then X amount goes to special teams. If that's really the issue, like, good God, the salaries of these guys, hire another assistant or hire another someone else to help out. I think it's inexcusable. I don't think we can chalk it up to time.
Yeah, that's fair.
And when I look at the talent makeup of all these guys, from Fred Davis, who, again, by the way, he looks like he's going out there and he's got great coverage ability. It's like he's been tasked with covering guys pretty well, except at the end, let them catch it. Like, it looks like those are his instructions, or at the end, pass interfere. So like there's talent there. And you could say, well, like my brother sent me a text, I miss the days of Mackenzie Alexander. It's like, fair enough, but these guys have talent. Like there's more talent than when Mackenzie Alexander was with Clemson. So I mean, this is like pretty unique in that there's so much talent. This the recruiting rankings, back that. It's just coaching, and it looked a lot like West Virginia, the Orange Bowl from 2011, 12.
Yeah, 11 season. Exactly.
Yeah. So
well, I think we have our low light of the game, Cody. It was just like I think the penalties. You can talk about, 15 yards is better than a touchdown allowed. Well, they eventually scored a touchdown on most of those series, usually through the air. So I think burnt all afternoon. It'll be nice to get Sheridan Jones back. I think having XT, having Malcolm Green, having Makuba, like a rising tide lifts all boats on this defense from a talent perspective. But either way, I think if you're Dave Doran, if you're Devin Leary, if you're upcoming OCs looking to attack this defense, I think you're going to make Clemson show that they can cover, in one-on-one matchups. So we'll see what they can do to scheme around that. We'll see what the return of, we hope Sheridan Jones is good to go. I think he's got a lingering stinger injury. Hopefully he can get healthy and come back, but definitely something to watch moving forward. Cool. Well, Cody, we're keeping this moving. Instant reaction. I wanted to ask you, like, what was maybe one of your one or two favorite moments from this game?
Favorite moments, DJ, his development, the throws to the tight ends. I saw some opportunities where he could have run a little bit more, but I gave him some flack early for being a little slow, a little hesitant. It looks like it's not just that he's gained a step in speed. It's confidence. Like he's seeing things unfold a little faster. So when he does run, he's been effective. He used that to sustain some drives where we otherwise would have stalled out. And I'll give like a shout out to Ngata. He made those 50-50 catches. He got strong, went up, made some big catches that you haven't really seen to this point in his career. So I'll go with that. The receivers and DJ.
Good ones for sure. My favorite moment, seeing Will Shipley come back in the game after that brutal knee hit on that kick return. Seeing him come in a series later, it was great to see. Mostly tongue-in-cheek answer here. I want to mix it up. I do want to talk about the defense. I think, with a game like that, Wake Forest running nearly 90 plays, getting key stops down the stretch in have-to-have-it moments, I think I do want to call out the totality of the defense coming through, digging deep, and stepping up there. Most of that credit I would put to the defensive line. I thought Tyler Davis played an amazing game coming back. You didn't hear Brzez's name called as much, but I think they were choosing to double Brze, which kind of opened things up for the rest of the defensive line. And you're right, like this was not like a 6-sack, 10-sack game for this DL. But I think they did just enough. I mean, you mentioned it, Clemson teams in prior eras would have succumbed to fatigue or injury, would have found a way to lose this game. This defense dug deep and found a way to step up and stop them on that last overtime series. So yeah, credit goes to them.
I think the reason that Wake was able to mitigate our defensive line for a good portion of the game was because of pace. I was watching, and it really takes a well-coached and kind of veteran or senior-laden type team, which is what Wake Forest is, to be able to get up to the line that quickly and all things firing all cylinders and have that kind of, that continuity. And obviously Sam Hartman's a fifth-year senior. So I think that kind of kept the defense on their heels a little bit. And, you looked at us like we don't get to the same level of pace. Maybe that's because you value the offensive coordinator's input over the pace itself. But yeah, I do give credit. Yeah, I'm with you. I give credit to the defense. Tyler Davis, it's like he's been here forever, and even from the moment he was a freshman, he was performing at like an all-conference level. Maybe he's now all-American level. He's just been, when he hasn't been injured, just tried and true.
Yeah.
And credit to Brze too. Like you said, he ate up some double teams.
Well, Cody, I know you follow basketball. Like there's that plus minus stat or the on off stat, like how good your team is when a guy is on the court versus off the court. The Tyler Davis stats must be insane just in terms of the splits between when he's healthy and in there versus, what this defense looks like when he isn't. So please stay healthy, big guy. We need it.
Yeah, he's probably no Grady Jarrett, maybe not a Christian Wilkins, but he's just been really good consistently for 4 years now. So credit to him. Gonna miss him when he's gone.
Cool. Well, Cody, let's move it on. I guess the last thing I wanted to talk about today to recap this game was what you think this game can tell us about this team and this season, the ceiling of this team or the opportunity this team has moving forward. To maybe kick us off here, I mean, across the country, like we said it time and again yesterday afternoon and yesterday evening, like so key to get this win. You got to win, you got to win ugly sometimes. Look back to the 2016 season, look back to the 2018 season. Like there were games Clemson found ways to win ugly and they went on to win titles. We're not saying this is a championship caliber team just yet. It's a work in progress, but really clutch to get that win. I guess for me, in terms of like what this tells me going forward, I want to see what this defense looks like when we do get some of these injured guys back, because I don't think we've seen a complete performance from them yet. The book is yet unwritten about what the ceiling of this defense can be. I think we're starting to see the offense raise the ceiling a bit on what this team could be and what they could look like. I really hope for this NC State game, which is going to be one of the better offenses we play all season, that we do have guys like Makuba back, as close to 100% as he can be to be a playmaker. I think both he and XT are going to be somewhat limited just by the nature of their injuries and how long they've been out. But either way, like really important for them to come in and play a role. And same goes for Sheridan Jones. Like, just really hoping that these injured guys can come in and make an impact.
Yeah, if someone told you, hey, we're 4 games in, we're 4-0, but also the offense is carrying the defense right now. A, would you believe it? And B, would you take that as an acceptable outcome? And I mean, after last year's offensive slog, whatever you want to call it, I would consider that, wow, that's great. Cause I feel like the defense has enough talent where they can find their footing as long as the offense can give them, it can complement them in some way. And I think DJ's done that and then some. The offense has done that and then some. That said, we could be sitting here talking about a loss to Wake Forest, our playoff chances effectively being over. And maybe we're talking about a pivotal moment in the Dabo Swinney era where we have to really be introspective and say, like, what's going on? We can't keep chalking everything up to injuries, because that's becoming its own recurring theme too. So not to be too negative, but I think
Yeah.
Well,
and we're one play away probably from having that conversation, right? Like it's that close of a variance where,
right.
Yeah, you're definitely right.
Where we are right now, and I hate to be this guy, but I think it was Wake Forest is well coached. It was at Wake Forest, but clearly the talent gap was just, I think we're 8-point favorites, but we're really probably 2 or 3 touchdowns better than them. So the fact that they were able to outcoach us that much, I mean, you have to look long and hard, and you can't just circle the cornerbacks. There's other parts of the defense, lack of adjustments, like you said, maybe a lack of intensity. I didn't know that, Venable's leaving, like the intensity would leave with him. I thought there was enough like meat on the bone with players that were remaining in talent where the intensity would kind of ride out or would carry over into this year and maybe next year. But I think we've already seen it fizzle a little bit. It's not the same mean defense with the kind of that tough streak that Venables had. So I think Dabo, if it'll kind of be a test of him as a coach, because I don't think he's ever faced this at this point. So, because if you want to get to that next level at this point, it's going to be more than just cleaning up a few things.
That's fair. And that question, Cody, can probably linger beyond this season, right? Like, I think what you're alluding to a little bit is like the coordinators we have on staff. And I think we've pointed to this recruiting class coming up for the 2023 year being very critical to restock the cupboards from a talent perspective on defense. But I was thinking we would still have some carryover guys, who stick around an extra year that can, to your point, bring the leadership, continue to carry that culture defensively of being, an intense defense. Now you question that a little bit. So
Right.
yeah, it's going to go beyond probably the NC State game and the remainder of this season, just in terms of like, what is the Clemson program moving forward? I think there's been some fair criticism thus far of not criticism, but just questions about the coordinator promotions and hires. And again, like maybe some of the conservatism that we've seen is by design and not by just that's what you get when you have Streeter and Goodwin calling the signals. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to continue to learn a lot in the next coming weeks. NC State, huge matchup. It's going to be under the bright lights of Death Valley. ESPN Game Day is coming in. Like, eyes of college football will be on Clemson this coming weekend. So huge matchup there. But when you look around the ACC after that, sure, Wake is well coached. They're seasoned. We were at their place, but there are other teams that are kind of rising up, in terms of their rebuilds across the ACC. These are lesser teams that Clemson's going to be way overmatched. Clemson is going to overmatch them in terms of talent level. The likes of Florida State, the likes of Syracuse, but you play a sloppy game against them, we could also take like a first, second, third loss. You could easily see that happen. So I don't know that our expectations for the year have changed at all through 4 games. Every goal is obviously still in front of the team, but there are kind of cracks in the structure that you could potentially see starting to form.
Right. And to make the distinction between the offense and the defense, I'm probably in the only guy in the camp that I actually think Brandon Streeter has done a good job, and I see a noticeable improvement in play calling. A lot of people don't like his conservatism. They don't like moving away from the run or going too run heavy at times. But I think he's been intentionally conservative at times to bring DJ along, as to not allow him to kind of blossom organically. And I think that's happened. And he needed to get a few wins under his belt. I mean, like just wins as in like connecting with receivers and not getting sacked. And I think he's brought him along to the point where now he's starting to open things up. He did that on Saturday against Wake. And obviously a good quarterback is a rising tide. And that's what you're seeing on the offense. Wide receivers are all of a sudden get better. You're talking about run blocking getting better. Pass protection has been pretty solid all year. The offense is really improved. So I'm really like kind of circling the defense right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, I know you probably don't, you object to the play calling and offensive scheming. Yeah.
Well, what I'll say is, I mean, I want to credit Streeter and Dabo and the coaching staff on how they've approached the DJ situation. Like DJ is even beyond a quarterback that can keep us in games right now. Like he's a guy that can go win a game for you, and credit to them for sort of how they've approached the quote unquote quarterback controversy, like, coach DJ up to this point and managed it. It's awesome to see. And I want to admit, like, we've definitely laid out reasons for issues that DJ had last year that were outside of him and between the ears for him, or, his capabilities. We've definitely laid out reasons for optimism that things would improve this year. And I think, myself, the rest of us here on the podcast have had reasons to believe optimism, why it would improve, and faith that he had the talent to do it. But I'll admit, like, I had my doubts that he actually would step through that door and would, show us this level of talent and realize it at Clemson. And he totally has 100%. So I want to salute DJ on that. And I do think some credit there. A lot of it goes to DJ and just who he is and, how talented he is. But a lot of that credit should also go to Streeter. From a play calling perspective, I think, in past games like Louisiana Tech, they were just executing, like there were by design reasons that they were trying to air out the ball and trying to like develop the pass protection or get receivers, unlocked and feeling comfortable with DJ. So I don't necessarily have any like lingering critiques of Streeter as a play caller just yet. I think we just need to see these guys get reps in big time situations with the back against the wall. We just had one against Wake Forest. And I thought the team did pretty well. I thought DJ played a near flawless game. I think the play calling felt a little vanilla around the goal line with, run plays to Shipley, that kind of thing. But maybe results trump process in my mind right now in this instant reaction show the day later. But I don't know. I'm good. I feel like, it's not like Streeter is a Lane Kiffin or, he's not necessarily like innovating with offensive concepts that are blowing my mind right now, but doing enough to win, doing enough to maximize the talent on the field each week has looked better and better. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Right. And there is a diversity of play calling in terms of like how he's using, well, at least there was against Wake Forest in terms of how he was using the tight ends, getting receivers involved. And I think I think he's been fairly good. And I've always been of the opinion that everyone says, you want to conceal something, you keep it for the end of the season. I fundamentally disagree with that. I think put as much on film as you can and give the opponent as much to think about, especially like what they did against Wake Forest. Now NC State's looking at film that they didn't have, they look at new wrinkles that we threw with the tight ends. Now they're having to spend more time in practice looking at the middle of the field. And I think that's the way you got to play it. DJ can win you games now. Like there's so much diversity there in terms of what he can bring, which I never thought I'd say this after that Georgia Tech game just 3 weeks later. But yeah, he's a winning quarterback. And the numbers bear out.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Cody, there's obviously more we could go into from this game, but I think we should wrap it up there. Thanks for doing this instant reaction show, man. Good to kind of touch base immediately following this game in the aftermath. Again, great to get this win. There are a lot of teams so far this year in the first 4 or 5 weeks that have found ways to lose and have found themselves fall out of the playoff hunt or the top 10 for the most part. So all of Clemson's goals are ahead of the team at this point. We mentioned it before. 7:30 game this coming weekend against NC State at Death Valley. ESPN Game Day is coming to town. Really, this is a battle not just for the Atlantic, but I feel like for the ACC. So stakes could not be higher in this one. I think we're going to find a lot out about this Clemson team this coming weekend. Should be a crazy week. I'm really excited to read a lot more reactions from the Wake game. I think a lot of the stats I saw have really talked up DJ in terms of his efficiency as a passer and comparing his stats to last year. That's all going to be cool to see. But, NC State's got a much better defense than Wake Forest. So I think he's going to have a real test coming up here.
It would be interesting to compare some of DJ's stats to Deshaun and Trevor's from the first 4 games, because they were kind of, I don't say notorious. They got off to some slow starts themselves for a variety of reasons. So we
have revisionist history, Cody, as fans. We're like, oh gosh, those guys were like Hall of Famers from the gun, and that just wasn't the case, right?
No, and if you look back to 2016, that was the year that there were a lot of issues on the back end with the DBs, with holding and PIs. And then on top of that, Deshaun Watson just clearly looked off the first, I think, 5-6 games. Same with Trevor, his sophomore year, where he was throwing some interceptions. So yeah, some revisionist history for sure. I guess my point being, I think DJ he's gotten to the point now where I think he stacks up statistically with those guys. I don't think he's at that level yet, but the statistics are there.
Yeah. In any event, you would never think after last season we'd be talking like this in terms of trying to stack that up. And look, these are not his first 4 games as a Clemson starter either. Like last year happened. We got to acknowledge it, but just to start a season, very encouraging for DJ. So I'm feeling pretty good. Cody, why don't we wrap it there? I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Feel free to leave us a review, tell a friend. Great way for us to get discovered as a podcast. Please head to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Clemson Pawcast. Subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications for when our shows go live. And you can definitely check that out over there. Obviously, you can also listen to us on your podcasting app or platform of choice. We're available on all of them. Thanks again for tuning in. And as always, go Tigers.